Welcome to LaunchPod, a podcast made by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. At Next, we're on a mission to build a more ambitious, prosperous, and competitive Canada to shine a light on all of the bold entrepreneurs working to advance our ecosystem. So join us as we talk to those on the front lines as they share their stories of grit, determination, failure, and success. Today, Next Canada CMO Jenn Patterson is in conversation with two accomplished entrepreneurs, Bannister and Bryn Jones. After transforming eBay and then founding Kijiji, Janet decided to pivot to helping other entrepreneurs realize their potential as partner at Real Ventures. Bryn joined the Real portfolio in 2016, and with the invaluable support from Janet, has since gone from seed stage to Series A. Listen on to learn how the two have worked together to see Bryn through the highs and lows of launching and scaling a business.
Janet and Bryn, we're so excited to have you here on one of our inaugural Next Canada podcast episodes. I just wanted to kind of jump right in and get started. Janet, I'm going to kind of throw the first question your way. I think you've had a very impressive career thus far that has not been necessarily a linear path, from transforming eBay from collectibles to a mainstream marketplace to founding Kijiji and then pivoting to then be a partner at Real Ventures. Just really curious the decision why shift from running a business to investing in businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us here. It's terrific to be here. And so why the shift from operating to a VC role? VC was never something that I considered. I never even thought about going into venture capital. And then I was contacted by one of the partners at Real Ventures, JS, who was looking to hire a partner in Toronto. And until then, they had all been, the entire Real Ventures team had been based in Montreal. So they wanted to increase their presence in Toronto and hire a partner in Toronto. And as I said, I was sort of surprised at first when he contacted me about venture capital because I'd never thought about it. But when I started reflecting on it and talking to JS, as well as the other partners at Real Ventures and others who I know in the industry, I realized that being in VC is really about working with entrepreneurs and helping those entrepreneurs succeed. And I realized that this was, first of all, a great pairing between my operating background as well as my consulting background. And also, I was at a point in my life where I had had some operating success, and that was great. But what I really cared mostly about was helping other entrepreneurs. And I thought, what could be better than working all day with people who are committed to building a business, who are passionate, who are high energy and hardworking. And if I can find a way to leverage my experience and help them in some way, what could be better? And so that's how I ended up joining Real Ventures 5 years ago.
Amazing. And so speaking of leveraging your experience, as an entrepreneur and founder yourself, how do you approach evaluating investment opportunities? Are you looking at the founder? Are you looking at the business? You're looking at a bit of both. And then, how does your past experience inform that?
Absolutely. So I think at a very high level, there's two major things. One is the vision, or you could say the company, and, hey, is this a huge vision? Do we believe that this could be a big business? And then the other is the founding team. And so just to dig into both a little bit, first of all, in terms of the company, it's, hey, is this a big vision? And is this a big market? Do they have a unique insight that will enable this company to win? Do they have a competitive moat? So there's sort of, all sort of almost business 101 type of things that go into that in terms of, market size, economics of the business, current players, how are they going to win? What's their competitive moat, et cetera, et cetera. And then in terms of the founder and the founding team, what I have learned over time is that success is actually not correlated with number of years in the industry or number of years experience. Success is more correlated with three things that I look at now. One is self-awareness. So is the founder aware of where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are? Are they aware of where they need help? The next thing is a growth mindset, and I mean that in the terms of personal growth mindset. So somebody who is always looking to get better and learn. And then the third thing is transparency. And by that, I mean not just transparency with the board, but transparency with themselves. And so being willing to look at the metrics and say, okay, is this working or is it not working? And what do I need to do to improve? And just being open, honest, and as I said, transparent with where they stand and where they need to go.
Awesome. And that's kind of a good segue to introducing us to Bryn. When we first chatted about bringing you on the podcast, and I said, who do you want to have on? Janet immediately said, well, I think Bryn would be perfect. I think that he'll be very honest, about his path and how he's gotten to the point that he's currently at with Partner Stack. So, with everything you've talked about evaluating the founder versus the business, what was it about Bryn and Partner Stack that made you first think, this might be something worth investing in?
Absolutely. So if you take this sort of the company and the founder, sort of those two different buckets. First of all, in terms of the company, I immediately saw a huge vision here in terms of what they're doing, and Bryn can sort of explain it in more detail what they're doing. But basically, they have developed a platform for companies to launch, manage, and build partner programs. So where partners are reselling the company's software or other products. And so I understood that, hey, this is a huge opportunity because, and through my experience at eBay, we had worked with a company called Commission Junction, which is in the affiliate space. I understood that business and the parallels. This is not an affiliate in the affiliate space, but there are some parallels. So I immediately saw that this could be a big vision. And then there were two unique insights that Bryn had, which very much got my interest. One was the importance of the partners. And so, again, it reminded me of my eBay days where whenever we had a tough decision to make between prioritizing the sellers and the buyers, we always said, hey, you've got to choose the buyers because at the end of the day, the sellers will go where the buyers are. And one of Bryn's unique insights was that they were the first player to look at the market that way and say, hey, it's the partners that are going to make this, and we need to build the product so that it works for the partners rather than just the large companies. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing. And then they also had this marketplace element, which was unique. And I remember from our first meeting, Bryn talking about AngelList and sort of some of how they learned from AngelList as a marketplace type of company. And so I thought that was really unique as well. So that was sort of on the company side. And then on the founder side, I could just, again, you go through those criteria that Bryn, from our first meeting, he was very authentic. He was very much, here's where we are, here's what we've learned. They had just finished YC. And he was very transparent about what they had done, what they had learned, what they tried that hadn't worked, how they had pivoted their business. And so I appreciated that in terms of, I could immediately tell, okay, here's somebody who understands where he is at, has a growth mindset, wants to personally grow. And I think the other thing in that I often look at is how quickly does the founding team go from having an idea, testing that idea, learning, iterating, like that whole cycle from test, learn, iterate, test again. The speed at which a founding team goes through that cycle is very indicative of how successful they will be. Because regardless of where you are in your business life, you always need to test new things. And as I talked to Bryn about the history of the company and why they had gotten to where they are, it was evident to me that they were able to go through that cycle very quickly.
Wow, cool. We've heard from Janet then on, this big vision that you had for yourself. And it sounds like you had all the right kind of ingredients to realize that vision. But, one of the things we talk a lot about at Next is knowing the problem that you're trying to solve and being really clear on what that problem is. So how did you come up with that problem that you were looking to solve? And then how did you really set about realizing your vision? Maybe if you want to focus in just on a few lessons you learned along the way towards realizing that vision, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I always joke that we have no business being in this channel sales space because what we do is we sell enterprise software to other enterprise software companies. So explaining what we do it's really challenging around the dinner table with family and around holidays.
Like the grandmother test.
Yeah, it's not as straightforward as a social network, as an example. But you can effectively think of what we're trying to do is build the world's largest sales team. And the way we got there was we built another company, and we built that company when I was in grad school. And the company was effectively a worse version of Slack. And on top of it, we sold it to nonprofits. Those are neither things you want to go through and do is in our learning, or at least we never learned how to go through and do it correctly. And so we bootstrapped this company and got really good at raising grants. We raised like $500,000 in grants. I was coming from grad school and was really good at writing that sort of stuff. And so we were, at the time we moved to Toronto from London because we're all at Western, and we were working in a house over at Bathurst and Bloor. And we looked at our business and we were doing, I think, like $15,000 a month in revenue, which at the time was like, we built a business, but it wasn't much to survive on. Like, we could eat better pizza and drink better beer, but like we were still living on pizza and beer. So we looked at the business and saw like what was working. And we were really naive. Like, we didn't have the capital to go build a sales team or anything like that. So what we did is we went to all of our friends who were working at web development shops, marketing agencies. And this was before there's really the big boom of tech in Toronto. And we just said to them, we're like, if you send us business, we'll send you a commission. And we were calling it a refer a friend program. And then really big companies started reaching out to us, not to use our product, which we really would have loved, but saying like, how'd you build your channel program? And to which we said, like, what's a channel program? We have no idea. And it came down to it was kind of like one of those serendipitous moments that you hear about that happened in the Bay Area, but actually happened in Toronto. And at the time, Shopify had really just started building out their office here. But it was still small enough where if you email people, like, they would get back to you. And we emailed someone named Travis Hines. And Travis was leading the partner program, or part of the partner program, over at Shopify. And we went down to Shopify's office and we said, like, hey, we think, like, what have we built? And what do you do? Because it looks like from the outside, things are working really well. And I was like, in 2014, he's like, yeah, like, we're not going to buy your software if you build it. But we have 65 people that manage this, and it does 20% of our revenue. And we're making a big investment in the tech behind it. But he also walked us through the problem and all of the problems. And in that meeting, effectively built our product roadmap. I don't even know if he's aware of the impact that he had in the business, but
would you like to say thank you?
Yeah, no, thank you, Travis. So that's where we got started. Immediately following that, we ran like some quick experiments where we had some companies sign up to our website. And then 60 days later, we got into Y Combinator on an idea. You know, it was pretty cool. It was very cool. So that's how we got to where we are. Some key lessons along the way is like, I actually don't think that you can, there's very few things that you can pick. Like, there's this like idea that being an entrepreneur means you get to go through and pick and choose your own destiny. But a lot of the decisions you make up front like, shape what's possible in the future. The big thing that you can go through and select is who you work with. And so your co-founders matter. And I have great co-founders. There's four of us. The four of us that are there worked on the previous company. We then, shut that company down and moved to the Bay Area for a period of time and worked on that company. We've gone through like ups and downs, and regardless, like, they just keep you like level headed. The next thing is I think it's very hard to chase like a market. So like a massive market opportunity. I think it's hard to just say like, hey, I'm going to solve something inside that market. I think you have to just solve problems that you understand or have key insights to, and you can help shape the market. Some of the biggest players in our space, like Salesforce as an example, were never really funded by any of the major venture capital firms because no one ever understood the market opportunity inside of SaaS. Turns out like there's a really big market opportunity. So I don't think that you can pick your market. I think that you can try to like fix a market. And I think that the last piece is a lot of people, and I certainly am guilty for it, but early day in our life cycle, I was always looking for like a silver bullet, find problems. But I've realized like generally like you just need a lot of lead to kind of like beat through really hard problems. So yeah, that's kind of, those are my lessons learned.
No, that's really fantastic. And I think it's really important for our listeners or anyone who's thinking of pursuing a career in entrepreneurship, that it isn't easy. But I think what Janet spoke to earlier about what she saw in you and your personality is ringing very true. There's that self-awareness, your willingness to learn from your mistakes and iterate. Would you say that kind of your relationship with your co-founders is really what's kept you moving forward in terms of getting through some of those rougher patches? Or has there been anyone else in your network who's been a true ally other than Janet? We'll get into that.
Yeah. No, so co-founders are the bedrock for everything. Ultimately, if you're going to start a business, like things happen in life, right? Like deaths happen, partners that you're with, there's like breakups, there's like divorce, there's all these bad, there's also incredibly good things that go in and happen. But if you start a business, it's very important that the co-founders that you have around the table are going to be there for you in good times and bad, and in good times and bad when the business is doing well, but as well when you're really struggling. Because if you're going to build something, like one of the YC partners, Aaron Harris, told me very early days in 2015 is you're going to build something that's going to take 10 years. If you're going to build something of substance, it will absolutely take 10 years. And things are not going to go well for you personally during that 10-year period. And so you better surround yourself with people that can support you there. Because building a business is actually like relatively easy. Building a business and living a life is actually like very difficult. So yeah, my co-founders, certainly early employees, like we've been, again, really fortunate that we brought in the right foundation, and the ones that didn't work, we got rid of very quickly, but they're still with us. Like our first 2 employees are still with us to this day. And so we treat them with a lot of respect. We give them responsibility and they get stuff done. And then, Janet, Tim, and our other investors have been really, really great as well.
Okay, great. Well, that's a good segue. Just wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk a bit about looking back on your growth trajectory, the lessons and failures. At what point did you decide to fundraise? And then how did you go about finding the right investors? If that was even something that you set out to do, or was it serendipitous?
Yeah. Looking back on it, and like I was thinking about that on my way over this morning. I don't know if we ever were as deliberate with it as we should have been. So we went through Y Combinator, and there's 100 other companies, and the 100 other companies all just raised money, and so we just did what the other 100 companies did, and that's kind of how we thought about it when we were in California. When we came back to Toronto, we realized it was like very different. It was like, hey, all of a sudden you're outside of this bubble. Because Y Combinator is a bubble, you're there for 3 months, and then you're kind of like shoved off the ship, and hopefully you can swim. We didn't realize what we had done. Now, so what we did is we actually went to like a network of people that were helping us beforehand. And back in 2014, 2015, my co-founder had been working pretty, like he'd gone and had a couple conversations with Mike Katcha, the CEO at Wealthsimple, and Mike said that he would help us. And so we just turned to people that said that they would help us. And Mike introduced us to Janet, and Janet and I like kicked off, like, and it was like, it made sense right away. Like Janet knew marketplaces, and, she went to the same university as I did. So we had lots to share there, and came from like an athletics background, which I did as well. And so it wasn't actually like, it mostly had to do with like the people that you trust and the relationships that you can build with them. And that's how we started working with Janet.
And from your perspective, would you say there was kind of that instant match? You've already spoken very fondly of Bryn, but do you how do you recall that first?
Yeah, I remember, as I said, Bryn and I were talking about this recently. We met at a Starbucks, and I remember sitting down with him, and I have a lot of first meetings with entrepreneurs, but it was really this idea when he told me what he was doing, like a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, yes, I see the parallels to what I've seen before in terms of marketplaces, but these guys are doing something that nobody else is doing in this space. I was impressed by the insights that he had that I talked about earlier, like the importance of, quote, the buyer side, or in this case, the partner side, the importance of thinking through how do you build a marketplace and that vision. And so I immediately connected with it. And I remember the first meeting thinking, I got it. I got what you're doing. I got why it's unique. I see where it's competitive advantage. I see where it's going to be big. And so then we continued talking.
Well, and then, obviously a lot happened between that first conversation and then saying, okay, let's do this. Was there anything that happened along the way to get you to the final term sheet that was really instrumental in finalizing that round?
Yeah, so I can speak from our side. So it's always easy to reflect and say like, hey, you had this meeting in a coffee shop and then you got the term sheet, then you got your Series A, but that like wasn't the case for us. We had the meeting in the coffee shop and we worked with Janet and Sam to go through and prepare to go and pitch the other partners at Real. And our pitch like really didn't go well. Like it was not good. I flew up to Montreal for the day. My co-founders were here in Toronto, and I don't think we clearly communicated what the opportunity was. And more importantly, I don't think we communicated why we were the people to go through and make the opportunity work, right? We're a bunch of 20-something-year-olds working in channel partnerships, which is, everyone that does is wearing a suit and has a big watch and lots of gray hair. That is absolutely what goes on. So like, it actually didn't go very well. And I remember coming back to Toronto and talking to Janet, and she's like, so how do you think it went? I was like, yeah, it could have gone better. And so
awareness again.
But ultimately, when we got a term sheet, I think that we're pleasantly surprised after the meeting happened. Then we really had to get to work. But yeah, these things they're never as simple as they're made to seem in like a movie or on a lot of blog posts. There's a lot of no's to kind of get to a yes. And even the people that ultimately say yes may like have like some questions before they do. So that was definitely like our experience in that early stage.
Yeah, and I think from our team at that stage, it was it was 3 or 4 years ago. They were doing basically a SaaS-based marketplace. So they had two revenue streams. One was the SaaS revenue, and then the other. And I mean, they were still very early; they had very little revenue. But their vision was initially, to do some sort of combination of SaaS and marketplace. And I think sometimes, as a business, when you have a model like that, a lot of VCs try to put you in a box. Mm. And I've noticed this with some of my other companies that sometimes investors will say, oh, well, you don't have to fit in this box and you don't have to fit in this box, so we don't know what to do with you. And I think that what's interesting is I think that, some of our partners were like, hey, what box do we put them in? And I remember having that discussion, like, how are they going to be big? Are they going to be big? Is this a SaaS play long-term or is this a marketplace long-term? I always believed that it was going to be a marketplace. I said, it's a marketplace. Anyways, and so after a few more discussions, absolutely, we decided to invest. And I think that I would just say, hey, as an investor, particularly a seed stage investor, you have to sort of see, okay, what's really there? And they may not be polished. Right. And so they may not be polished in terms of the founders, right? And they may not tell the best story, but we need to see, okay, what is the potential, right? And so really we're looking for not, hey, did they come across super slick necessarily, but do we believe that there's the potential? Mm-hmm. And then we view our job as seed stage investors as taking, working with those seed stage companies, the founders and the founding team, and making sure that they're ready so that when they raise a Series A, that's when they need to know how to pitch their company well. They need to know how to run a board meeting, so their first board meeting with their Series A investors go well. That sort of thing. And so we think, hey, that's our job. And so it's a part of our work is sometimes like, hey, let's find that diamond in the rough.
Okay.
We were certainly in the rough.
You saw something, and it sounds like your visions were pretty much aligned. Right?
Yeah.
Would you have at the time said you saw yourself as a marketplace?
Yeah, we saw ourselves as a marketplace, but I don't actually think we actually understood what a marketplace was. We sort of did, but not really. If you look at our pitch from demo day, from Y Combinator, the business that we have today is the exact same business as we had then. Wasn't a straight path to get from where we were then to where we are now, but I think it speaks to like the idea and really what we captured. And some of the insights that we had early days. And then the reason why we are still what we are today is because the people that we surrounded ourselves with, the people that we took money from, like Janet, all of our investors, really like pushed us to be who we were and not something that was different. It's so easy to go off path. That's like the best way to fail.
Right. Speaking of that path, thinking back, when was the seed stage? That was what year?
We closed, I think, in 2016.
2016. Okay. So since then, how would you say your business has evolved since coming into the Real portfolio? And, how has Janet and the Real network helped your business evolve and grow?
In 2015, we closed on like this really pretty graph that like went up and to the right, but there was no revenue with it. And in 2016, we realized like, wow, we have to build a real business. It has to generate real revenue. It has to drive real value to our customers. And 2016 was really tough for us as a business. I think we met every 2 weeks or so for like 3 months. And the update that I kept providing to Janet was, she's like, where are things at? I'm like, well, Janet, like we're going to the dentist. Like no one wants to go, but everyone has to. And it was that time where we were building the value into our product and we're making really hard decisions, right? Like, and kudos to Janet. Thank you for not making my life really bad during that time, because it wasn't about actually growing. It was actually about building the product. And that's a really hard update to hear if you're an investor. Hey, like we took your investment and we're just building. Actually, usually that's where companies fail. But that's what we had to do. And we were really methodical in the way that we did it. For us, the really important piece was time for onboarding. We realized that was a huge barrier for our customers when they were coming onto our platform. So, our time to onboarding at one point in time, I think was like 45 to 60 days. And so we looked at that metric and we just hit it over and over and over every single week. How do we take it from, 60 days to 45? How do you take it from 45 to 30? Some of the experiments we ran did not work. But that was a pivotal point in our company, because we could have done let's just grow and let's figure it out after the fact. But we decided to go heavy down on building value. Did that in 2016, really started going to market into end of 2016, early 2017. So like that's when we started generating revenue. At one point in time, we had to pretty much fire all of our customers they're users, they weren't actually paying us. But we had to do that at the end of 2016, which is also tough, giving up when your revenue is like $10,000 a month and you give up $9,000 of it. That sucks. And again, is not a great update to share with your investors. 2017 was figuring out how to sell. Like product market fit is not just building a product, it's actually figuring out who to sell that product to. And 2018 was learning how to scale. And, we're very fortunate to work with Janet to go through and figure out those moments, because there's a lot of points during that period where it was certainly very tough. And we're now at a stage where it's about growth. It's about, we've got a process that works. How do we make it work? If it works 100 times, how does it work 1,000 times?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to, Janet, talk a bit about this from your perspective?
I mean, so I have so many great memories of working with Bryn, and I'm sure they will continue. But I think if you think about what we just talked about on sort of the time to onboard, and I remember that very vividly. And basically, what he said is, "Hey, I need to focus on this time to onboard." And for me as an investor, what it meant was that they were not hitting the revenue targets that they had said that they would hit. But it actually didn't fuss me too much, because the way I look at it is, we are investing in this business to be a huge business. So is this the right thing for the company to do now? Yes, absolutely. You go back to the cycle that I talked about in terms of, hey, how quickly are they testing, learning, iterating? And so to me, every time I sat down with Bryn, he'd say, yeah, we don't have any more revenue, but here's what we've done in terms of improving the onboarding. And we had agreed that that was the most important thing to focus on. So we were aligned on priorities, and he was making progress against the priorities. So I thought, hey, that's great. And to me, it was all about, hey, you're laying the foundation to be a huge business. And so during that time, frankly, because the revenue wasn't coming in as we had originally projected, we did, I think, a couple of 2 bridge rounds.
Yeah.
As a result. And so, there are, again, you've got a company that's not hitting their targets, and yet we invested more and other investors invested more. And I think the reason is because every time I, as an investor, look at that and say, hey, here's a company that's not meeting their milestones, do we invest more? The 2 questions I ask myself is, hey, number one, do I still believe in the vision? Do I still believe that this is going to be a huge company? And secondly, do I still believe in the team? And so whenever I would ask myself, absolutely, I would say, yeah, 100% still believe in the vision. 100% think this team is great. Yeah, they're taking a little bit longer, but they're doing the right things. And so that and as we've seen more recently, now they're able to scale. And it's Bryn, as Bryn alluded to, he was a competitive swimmer. I was a competitive runner. We often sort of talk about competitive athletic analogies. And Bryn and I were talking the other day. And if you don't mind me saying this, when Bryn, and my son is a competitive swimmer, so like we have lots to talk about. Anyways, he said that that he was quite small when he was younger. As a result, he had to work really hard because he hit his growth spurt later. But then once he hit his growth spurt, he took off. And I said, remember how you told me that? I said, that's a little bit like your business, right? You didn't, and I can think of other companies in our portfolio as well that had to struggle more when they were in their early stages, either because it was just really tough market, or maybe the company that they just was not what investors were looking for in terms of it didn't fit into an investor's sweet spot. So they had to really figure out very quickly how to operate in a very cost-effective way. And then when you hit it, you can scale so quickly because you have that foundation. And I think that's what we're seeing right now with PartnerStack.
Mm-hmm. I like that analogy. Like we do talk a lot about the need to walk before running. But again, thinking about who's potentially listening in today, I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably do think, oh no, I need to hit those more traditional KPIs to demonstrate growth. But I think it's fantastic that you didn't underestimate the importance of that foundation. And thank you for being so candid about the lessons you've learned along the way, because it seems that you've really been able, with the support of Janet and your co-founders and other people in your network, to move beyond those. I know that PartnerStack just hit $1 million in annual recurring revenue in 2018, and in 2019 you closed into it. That's a huge deal. And another round of financing. So congrats.
Thank you.
I know we spoke earlier about, you haven't really shared very publicly the success on the fundraising side of the business and some of your bigger wins because you've been heads down, but it seems that that's really paid off for you. But looking at the success now, was there a moment in time when you had that moment that, man, this could really be a rocket ship? This business could be really huge.
There's a few moments, but the biggest moment came when we were negotiating a contract with a very big customer. And the customer wanted us to do something that was outside the vision of what we wanted. And when I say a very big contract, I mean, like well over 6 figures. And we could have said yes to their request, but we made the decision to say no. And they told us they weren't going to go through and pursue. They would not sign that contract. And this is something that they put in like the day that it was supposed to go through, close and sign, last minute. It's something that we had communicated with to everyone over and over and over and over and over. And what it was it's very important for us to actually own the partners in the platform. And our customer wanted to own the partners, which meant we would have been limited in our capacity to grow the network. So we wouldn't be able to share a partner other commission opportunities that are inside of our network. We would have needed to get permission from our customer for that to go through and happen. And I remember saying no, and it was very hard for this to say no to. But I remember the conversation I had with my co-founder is like, if we say yes, like we're just going to become like their custom development shop. They're going to tell us how to build our product and our roadmap. And I mean, the way that we actually said no was, if you want to buy us, you can tell us what to do, but you are our customer and you will not go through and buy us. And like our vision is very different. And the value that we can ultimately provide to you is very different because of X, Y, and Z. And they took it back and they came back and they said like, no, you're right. In realizing that we had that type of leverage in this network was the moment where we could say no to things. We could say no to very big customers, was when we realized like, wow, we really built something that was like very valuable. That was the most tangible point that we realized that what we had built was very big.
And I think so tied to that, because I remember Bryn calling me throughout this process when this was happening. He's like, okay, here's what's happening and here's what we think. And I mean, I just think it's another example to what we talked about before, that I believe the objective of the founder at the early stage is not to maximize revenue in the short term. It is to build the foundation for an amazing business. And by the PartnerStack team willing to say, we are going to do what's in the long-term interest of the business. We are building a big business and we will not violate our principles in order to close one big contract in the short term. I mean, that was, I think, very pivotal in establishing who they are today.
Would you say that so in terms of understanding the potential for the business, that was a big moment for you as well, from your perspective?
Well, actually, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't say it's interesting. I don't think there was one moment per se. I also think, it's interesting, the wording of your question in terms of, hey, when did we think that the company could become a rocket ship? And I think that there's no such thing as a rocket ship. There's no such thing as a rocket ship. It's a lot of ups and downs. Maybe it's more like a roller coaster, but a roller coaster makes it seem so easy because you just get on and go. And it's never that way. And I think too many times, and Bryn alluded to this earlier, that founders will read an article about a company in say BetaKit or somewhere else, and they'll say, oh wow, that company, they just got a big contract or they just raised a huge round. And they sort of look at that and say, hey, why is it so easy for them? And why is it so hard for me? And the reality is, it is so hard for everybody. They just don't publicize that. And doing what I do, I get to see sort of how hard it is. And then I see sort of the publicity, which is, hey, it's great. And it is great, but it's never easy. And I remember, in the early days of Kijiji, it was hard. It was really hard. And we struggled and we had lots of setbacks. And somebody a few years ago said, Kijiji was so amazing. It was just like, it wasn't there, and then the next thing you knew, it was everywhere, and it just came from nowhere. And I thought, yeah, it really just didn't feel like that. I was like, and then, I just was talking to another one of my founders last night who has just had a very significant milestone. They're closing a Series B, and I was congratulating him, and he said, hey, and I was just saying, hey, how you execute so well and things like that, and he said, yeah, well, it was really hard. It was really, really hard. And I said, yeah, I know it's hard. And so I think that one of the key things I would say to any entrepreneurs is, if it's really hard, if you feel like you're getting, sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, that's the way it's sort of supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. And you just need to keep going, keep learning, and keep growing.
So what is the right analogy? Now I don't know. I think it's true though. Like, there is no such thing as a rocket ship. But do you think that like most of the companies you've worked with have some kind of inflection point? Or again, is it just this 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it depends. Yes, maybe when they hit product market fit and they feel that they have product market fit. But what I don't think it ever gets to a point where a founder can say, oh, now it's smooth sailing. There's always going to be challenges. And it doesn't matter who you are. It's like, hey, there's always going to be challenges. And yes, you might have hit an inflection point, and then you'll go along, and then you'll hit another inflection point, and then you'll hit another inflection point. Or you figure out how to maybe expand internationally, and that'll be great. And then you think, oh, geez, now we've got to launch this new product. And then maybe that'll take off, and you'll think, great, now that's another inflection point. And then you'll decide, something else. So I think rather than I think it's not a matter of, hey, 1 inflection point, you hit it, and then great, you're on a wonderful rocket ship. It's more like, there's a lot of different inflection points as you go through your journey, and you need to just keep working and learning and getting better. So,
Bryn, where are you at on your journey now? Kind of looking forward, where do you think you want to take Partner Stack? What's next? Do you have any moonshots or North Stars that you're aiming for?
Yeah, I think it's like really just doubling down on what we're doing. You can never do it all as an entrepreneur. And a lot of people really emphasize, it's a very important piece, like storytelling. But a lot of people emphasize storytelling externally, whereas they should probably focus more of their attention on storytelling internally. And if you focus on storytelling internally, you have incredible employee retention. Everyone feels like incredibly empowered to do their job and like really buy in and believe into the mission. Whereas if you're doing, LinkedIn poetry and chasing the next blog post or article on all the tech websites, you're the first one that people want to tear down. And it's probably not driving value to your business. And so for us, really, it's about we're developing our plan for 2020. It's about the theme is like frictionless. Like, how do we make the experience frictionless for everybody that works at Partner Stack, all of our customers? Like, how do we? What does that look like as a theme? And then just how do we like all the processes that we use to get here are not going to get us to the next stage. So then how do we build all those processes again? And in what order, maybe more importantly? Because prioritizing stuff is incredibly important. And I think that we're really good at prioritizing stuff, and like we're pretty ruthless with it. And it means saying no to a lot of stuff. Or it means just not chasing some stuff that may like actually help your ego, but doesn't help the business. But long term, it's the right call. And even the hottest companies that make it the absolute furthest, that are darlings, have people go through and attack them. I mean, like we're seeing that right now in public markets. It will happen at some point in time. So just focus on your business.
Would you echo that advice for Bryn, just as he's thinking about growing his business?
Absolutely. And I love the frictionless as a theme for given where he is now. But I think at the end of the day, really, business comes down to two things. One is, setting the right priorities and then executing against those priorities. And yes, that involves team, and it involves understanding, and it involves technology, and it involves everything. But it really is about, figuring out what you're going to do and then going and doing it.
Exactly. We're Next Canada, so we're all about supporting and growing businesses in Canada, but we recognize that a lot of businesses have to expand globally, maybe less so for B2B, but where does that fit into your roadmap, if at all? Like, how far do you plan on taking your business in Canada versus globally?
Yeah, so we've already started growing globally. We hired our first international employee who's based in LA. Hi, Stephanie. In Q2. And so we think of ourselves as like, we're Canadian, but we're building a global business. Therefore, like, we have to be everywhere. We made the decision to come back to Canada in 2015, where we could have stayed. If we would have stayed in the Bay Area, we would have raised like a lot more money and but it wasn't the right decision. And so we think that, the reason why we came back to Toronto was because it was the best place to build our business globally. And we are going to continue building a global business now. The world and the way work is changing. There's a lot of remote work. There's a lot of like multiple offices. Like some people believe in like you need to be in one core place. I expect the way we work will change, and we're just kind of like open to it, because the one thing that we've gone through and realized is like there's no one right way to do this. There's just like right strategies at right points in time with the right people around the table.
And Janet, what's your perspective as a VC in terms of local versus global?
Yes.
Does it matter?
I think every business in Canada needs to be thinking globally. That being said, I think that Canada is a fantastic place to grow a company. Often I think about, what do you need in order to grow a company? I.e., what do you need from a community standpoint? And I think there are three main things. One is talent, one is ambition, and the other is capital. And when I look at those three things, I think, Canada's great talent, great engineering talent, and increasingly great talent from, product management, it's sort of sales for startups, etc. So very strong talent. Ambition, I think historically, i.e. like 10 years ago, it was something that Canadian entrepreneurs were criticized for, that they didn't have enough ambition. I'm definitely seeing a change in that, where entrepreneurs today want to build huge businesses. They want to build globally recognized companies.
What do you think's driving that?
I think part of it, frankly, was Shopify. I think that was part of it. And people saw, if they can do it, sort of I can do it too. I think you also have repeat entrepreneurs who are coming back into the market who have said, I sold a business for X and now I want to take this business and I want to do 10X. And then I think the other thing is capital. And we're seeing more and more capital, both Canadian VCs as well as foreign equity capital is coming in to support the companies. And I think in terms of an ecosystem, it's very much a network or a snowball or a flywheel where all of those three things, the talent, the ambition, and the capital, it builds on each other. And so a rising tide lifts all boats and then, really helps it. And so I am super excited about the state of the Canadian ecosystem. I was in San Francisco a few weeks ago talking to a set of Japanese investors. I was in London last week talking to a bunch of European investors, and definitely I can tell you from an international perspective, Canada is on the radar, and people are saying, wow, you guys have a great tech ecosystem there, and we want to spend more time there.
That's fantastic. Do you think there's anything, though, that we could be doing differently to attract more foreign investment or just to kind of grow more Canadian entrepreneurs?
I mean, I think that we have the right ingredients. As I mentioned, I think that we need to continue to build on the strong community. Mm-hmm. So many of the strong entrepreneurs that we have noticed that they really develop strong bonds with other entrepreneurs in similar situations and learn from them. And, for instance, Bryn, I know often I will talk to him and we'll hop on a call and I'll say, well, I was talking to this founder about this and that founder about this. And you just can learn so much. And so I think it's important that as we grow, that we continue to have a very strong community. And certainly the types of things that Next is doing is fantastic, both in the educational content, in the mentorship, and in the bonds that the entrepreneurs can build with other entrepreneurs at the same stage as them.
Thanks for saying that. Do you think you're done with your entrepreneurial journey?
I don't know.
Sorry, curveball.
That wasn't on the script. You know what? Right now, I absolutely love what I do. I feel so lucky to get to do what I'm doing, and some people in VC say, hey, you know what? Well, I miss the satisfaction of being an operator. Personally, I don't find that. I find, seeing entrepreneurs grow and have success gives me so much joy that I absolutely love what I do, and I find it incredibly rewarding to see people who I work with grow personally and then develop their businesses and have success. I just love it.
I love that sentiment. It's very altruistic, but I know that you are doing something really great for the Canadian ecosystem, right? Thanks. And the two of you, I think, have had a really fantastic journey together, and really appreciate you sharing the highs and the lows. And I think that our listeners will learn a ton. Just in closing, though, thinking on where you've been and all your experiences, for anyone listening, what advice would you offer them or even your younger selves and someone who's thinking of setting out on kind of this entrepreneurial path?
Yeah, so on my side of things, be skeptical of anybody that's providing advice on like an entrepreneurial path. Don't be like really, I think for a while we chased frameworks or looked to people for to validate things that we were doing, but have learned that that's actually not how you become a good entrepreneur. You become a good entrepreneur by making decisions very quickly, learning from those decisions, and being able to then move forward very fast. You really need to have a short memory on your failures. I get really frustrated when people come to me over and over and over and over and over with opinions on stuff, and they're like, yeah, I talked to this person, I talked to that person, and I'm like, listen, if you just want me to tell you that you're right, just make the decision. No one's holding you up on it. So just be careful on who you listen to, because everything that you read that is true is also not true. And at the end of the day, you have to make the decisions. If you're going down this path, you own your destiny, and don't put that on anyone else. Be proud of that you have the capacity to go through and do that. And it's much easier to do today than it was in 2014, and much easier to do in 2014 than it was in 2008 here in Toronto. And so just own your path and just be happy about the way you made decisions. Spend more time thinking and reflecting about that than needing to be validated. Because the hardest and highest returning decisions that you make, no one will agree with.
Awesome. Good, Janet.
I have three things that I thought about sharing. One is to always be learning. Always be learning, both in terms of, how you can be a better leader, how you can be a better entrepreneur, how you can, and other things. Just always be learning, invest in your own personal growth would be number one. Number two is, develop strong bonds with people who make you a better person, from who you learn from, who give you energy, who support you. because you will need those people, and they will help you, but also you can help them. And this is a community, and so give back, think of people, develop those bonds, and they will help you and you will help them. And then the third thing that I would say is, listen to your heart and follow your passions. And, Bryn talked about sort of the decision making and listening to yourself. And I think absolutely 100% agreed with that. But I guess I would also say, listen to your heart in terms of, hey, what do you want to do in your career? What type of business do you want to operate? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to be something else? That really listen to what your heart is doing, because if you are not doing something that you're passionate about, I don't think you will ever achieve the fullest success that you could realize.
And people can feel it when you're not passionate, right?
Yes.
I'm sure you've seen that from other pitches.
Yes. And on the flip side, if somebody feels your genuine passion and energy and enthusiasm, then that is contagious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I'm sure everyone's just learned a lot. And again, thank you. This was one of our kind of inaugural episodes. So.
Well, thank you so much for including us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into LaunchPod. Check back in often to hear from bold entrepreneurs paving the way for a more prosperous and competitive Canada. To learn more about our 500 entrepreneurs and the work they're doing to put Canada on the global stage, please visit nextcanada.com.